Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to our position previews for the spring. We are now on the defensive side of things. We're going to start on the defensive front and talk about the edge defenders for the University of Texas and what they'll be bringing to the table. This position preview brought to you by good friends at tackleaddict.com, and we'll tell you a little bit more about our friends at tackleaddict.com a little bit later on in this preview. But, gentlemen, the edges right now for Texas, you're talking about one which has to be one of the more talented edge rooms in the country. And for Texas, a tremendous amount of upside here. You got, Trey Moore and Colin Simmons coming back. Both of those guys ended the season last year with very strong campaigns. And Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons, a lot expected from those guys. Also, Ethan Burke got a lot of playing time as well last season. And Colin Simmons is a guy, if he can stay healthy, he has tremendous upside. I mean, this is a group, and you're bringing in some freshmen that we'll discuss as well. But if you're just talking about a potential foursome of guys you can rotate, I think Texas will have a really strong group. There's no doubt led by Colin Simmons, who's considered to be one of the best defenders coming back in college football, period.
Yeah, my initial thought, Jeff and Rod, is this. Most talented position on the team when you combine talent with experience next year.
Wow.
And it's crazy how far it's come for us to say that. And the reason I say that is Colin Simmons may well be as good a defensive player as there is in college football next year. He was the National Freshman of the Year over Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. That is nothing to sneeze at in that class. Trey Moore is a hell of a football player, man. He is really good against the run. He's shown pass rush ability. He finally started getting home late in the season. Those guys have versatility. You can drop them, although I don't want to see Colin Simmons drop too much, but you can drop those guys. And then you get to the other side. Ethan Burke is a talented, long-arm guy that has played a lot of football at Texas. Colton Simmons, if he can just ever stay healthy, obviously he'll be out this spring again. If he can ever stay healthy, guys, he's shown the flashes that you're just kind of like, man, that guy could be an 8 to 10 sack guy. I mean, he has that type of motor and play tenacity about him. And then behind the scenes, I'm hearing really good things about Zena's upside. And that's before we talk about the freshmen. It's a really talented group, which may have an All-American, a first-team All-American in it this year.
You go back to Sark's first year, Rod, we talked on Longhorn Blitz a lot about just how bad the edges were against the run. I mean, they were giving up over 7 yards of carry from the C gap and out in 2021 on runs. I mean, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. And now, not just their ability to stop the run, but if you're looking at your top four right now with Moore, Simmons, Burke, and Vosick, if Ethan Burke in that group is your probably fourth best pass rusher, you got some dudes that can get after the quarterback. Yeah. And Jerry, I love what you said about Trey Moore, because to me, he's kind of like that baseball player that might have a low batting average but doesn't have a lot of strikeouts. Like, he's hitting the ball hard. He's just hitting it right at people. And it's like sooner or later, those line drives to the shortstop are going to start being extra base hits to the gap. And that's exactly what happened. He started getting home. I mean, unfortunately, had that hit on Carson Beck on the last play of the first half of the SEC championship game. It just changed probably Georgia for the better, because you didn't know Gunnar Stockton was playing, and that's a discussion for another day. But, yeah, he started to get home. Colin Simmons, I probably haven't seen a young Texas defender have an impact like that in the front seven. Not saying it just because they were the same number. But you go back to Derek Johnson's impact he made as a true freshman, Rod, your junior year back in 2001. Yeah. That, to me, is the kind of impact Colin Simmons had early on. It's a phenomenal group. It's the best edge group I've seen at Texas in a very long time.
Yeah, what I like about the group is you're talking about that top four, right? Simmons, and then Moore, and then Burke and Vosick. Simmons and Moore they're speed rushers. I mean, there's no doubt about what they do well and their elite trait. If you're an offensive tackle, your number one thing you got to worry about, which gives them natural counter. And even Trey Morris talked about it. His natural counter is he comes back to the spin move, because once the old tackle oversets, boom, he comes back to it. But Ethan Burke and Vosick are different types of penetrators, different types of pass rushers, right? They're not speed rushers. So you do got a little variety in there. And I want to bring that up too. because one thing we saw from the influence of, Johnny Nansen with PK is that they were matchup based to sometimes last year, right? The defense would change based on the matchup. Like you would see the 3D tackle package, running the 3-4, the big nickel package, right? To be a matchup based situation, sometimes team based. You have a lot of versatility here. I wonder, depending on who we see during the season and how the offensive identities ended up, how it ended up, materializing throughout the season. If you play a team that wants to play some power football and that it wants to run the football at you, if you can throw together a different combination of these guys that may be more effective, game to game. We know situation because that's the NASCAR package in a nutshell.
Yeah.
When they throw 3 defensive ends on the field. So that's what I like. I like the variety that you got in skill sets. I think you can do you can have a lot of multiplicity in how you solve problems with the variety you have at edge.
And I want to add this too. I mean, he's playing linebacker, but Brad Spence isn't far off from being able to do the same things Trey Moore is. So this position to me also, guys, has the ability to withstand injury if it happens. Like you can't replace Colin Simmons. I'm going to get to how good Colin was as a freshman in a second, but say Trey Moore goes down with an ankle or something for a couple of games. Brad Spence, you could roll right into that position from linebacker. And he's a very similar player. That's just more of a linebacker that plays in space at a higher level too. So I love the versatility. To your point, Rod, the versatility when we're talking about those 4. I also think this is how deep Texas has become, that a Brad Spence is playing linebacker, transferred in from Arkansas. But in a pinch, you could put him down there and maybe not lose a beat. I mean, that's how talented Texas is getting right now.
I think too, Rod, what you're talking about being more matchup based, we saw this. I wish PK was more like this kind of early in his tenure, but we've seen it as he's evolved as a coordinator. And again, the Johnny Nansen influence is a really big part of it. You're right that they've been more matchup based. You think about when they play a team like Oklahoma this year, who's probably going to be more of an air raid type team than we've seen Oklahoma be in a while, just in terms of the traditional air raid with that Washington State offense coming in. Do we see more of those edge guys play? When you look at how the snaps were broken up, and Jerry, I think this will lead into the discussion about Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons played the 3rd most snaps last year in that edge room. I didn't think that was going to be the case before the year, but you had Trey Moore. This is according to Pro Football Focus. Trey Moore at 674, Barron Sorrell 651, Colin Simmons 472, and then Ethan Burke at 324. So it's not like Colin Simmons did his work on just a handful of snaps. He played a whole hell of a lot and was not just, whether you're talking about the Pro Football Focus numbers, the raw statistics, whatever. Jerry, it's one of the better defensive freshman seasons we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about when Colin came out, because everybody, in our chats, what's the player comparison, right? And I actually love those questions. It's kind of what makes the job fun. I always looked at Robert Mathis of the Colts. But, okay, so let's bring it to where we are now. Who's a player comparison? Is it Abdul Carter? Is it because he wears 11? Is it because they're actually very similar? Abdul Carter is listed at 6'3", 259. Colin Simmons will probably be in that area code when he comes out for the NFL draft after 2 more seasons. But how good was Colin Simmons as a freshman? Abdul Carter had 56 total tackles. He was a star day 1 too. I think he played more snaps than Colin his freshman year. 56 total tackles, 6.5 sacks, 4 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles. 6.5 sacks. Colin Simmons went beyond that as a freshman. And now Abdul Carter is being talked about as a potential top 3 pick. If not, some people asking, should he be number 1? That's why I think this edge room has a chance to be special, is I think they have a special player, Rod. And you just think about what Abdul Carter did as a freshman, and then his sophomore year only had 4 sacks, and I don't think we're going to see a dip from Colin Simmons at all. Then he had 12 this past year and 63 tackles and 12 sacks, and that talent level is taking him to the top 3 pick in this draft probably. I think Colin Simmons is going to be right there, Rod, at the end of the day. And when you have a player like that and then have other really good players that are draft picks around them, you have a chance to have a special room.
Yeah, his BGO is unlike it's otherworldly. I mean, It's unlike anything I've seen. Like I said, I love actually when I'm rewatching film, I love to pause it and trying to get the still shot of him right out of his stance. And most damn near all the offensive line except for the center they're still in their stance. And this dude is like, his head's already past the line of scrimmage and the ball's already snapped and nobody else is moved. It is, I'm telling you, it's freaky, man. It is some other crazy stuff. Let me ask you this. Let's go real quick before we move on. Colin Simmons sack predictions for next year, because he's definitely going to get to double digits. I mean, he got to 9 sacks this year. And as you just pointed out the snap count there, Jeff, he'll play much more this season, and he won't be as situational. So he'll get a lot of just splash plays. With 9, by the way, 7 of those 9 sacks came in the NASCAR package where they weaponized Colin Simmons. What's the number you got for Colin Simmons this season, guys? Because double digits to me is a given. I think it'd be a huge disappointment if he didn't get double digits this year.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 11.5 or 12.
That's good.
I think he's gonna. Look, I don't look for a sophomore slump out of him. I'm not looking at that. There's too much competition in the edge room. There's too many guys motivating each other. Colin Simmons won the National Freshman of the Year, and I think he relishes the opportunity to back that up. I also think with Colin Simmons, it's one of those weird things, because he had a sprained ankle his senior year in high school, a high ankle sprain that kept him out of the Under Armour game. The Under Armour trainer said he can't play on this. We're not letting him play. So his ranking dropped his senior year, and I don't think he's ever forgot that. I mean, he was the number 1 edge in the country. I think he's got that motivation part, which is what makes him who he is. I look for him to say 9.5. I'm going to better that this year. I bet he gets 11.5 or 12.
I'm going a little bit above Jerry. I'm going 12.5. I think he makes a serious run. You look at the last high volume sack guy Texas had was probably Jackson Jeffcoat at 13 in 2013. I think Colin Simmons gets 12.5. I think he knocks on the door of that 13.
Ooh, yeah.
What you got, Rod? What you got, Rod?
I'm gonna go 12. I'll go right in between you guys. I'll go 12. I think 12 it to me sounds about right with him, because he's gonna get more attention now. He's still gonna, wreck games, no doubt about it. But he'll get a little bit more attention now, and he's not gonna be able to surprise people like he did at times last season. But I can tell you, I think they'll find another way to, like I said, they'll move him around a little bit. They'll find ways to weaponize him like they did this past season. So I'll go 12. I mean, the guys if they can get him in 3rd and long like they did this past season a lot, man, he'll feast. There's no question about that. All right, guys, not only, of course, Trey Moore is another guy who really picked up his play toward the end of the season. Do we think about this? Can you have 2 guys? Is it possible Texas get 2 guys close to double digits? There are a few schools that got a couple of guys close to double digits. But it's a tough thing to do. I think Texas did it. Actually, around the time Jackson Jeffcoat was here, maybe it was Cedric Reed. Was it Cedric Reed?
Yeah, it was. You're right. You're 100% right.
Is that a possibility with Trey Moore? Because Trey Moore he had 6.5 sacks last year, somewhere around there, 7.
I guess my question there is, how many snaps do they take from each other at times?
That's true.
I mean, that's kind of my question there. That's why, the sleeper guy for racking up numbers is Colton Vossick if he's healthy, because there's a lot of snaps that were lost when Barron Sorrell graduated.
Yeah.
And if Vossick ever has a healthy season, because I think Ethan Burke is more of a all-around player using his length than a pass rush guy. But now Colton Vossick's going to get after the quarterback in his way, in more of a, and I'm not comparing him as a player, in more of a JT Tuamolo, Jack Sawyer way, not with just explosive edge quickness, but with a combination of strength, power, initial quickness, and real want to and physicality. Yeah. He's the sleeper guy for me, because I think Trey Moore and Colin they may take too many snaps from each other, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, to me, I agree with you, Jerry, and I've said as much. To me, I see a lot of Charles Omenihu and Ethan Burke. Charles had 9.5 his last year at Texas, but he was doing it. I'm not going to say he was a one-man show, but he was their best pass rusher. But he might have gotten to double digits had he not been playing in an odd front. Ethan Burke has the luxury of playing in an even front defense. But I'm with you on Vossick. Like when Colton Vossick's on the field, he makes things happen. Yeah. It's just the when he's on the field part. That is the only problem with Colton Vossick's game right now. He just has to be on the field.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. And outside of that we talk about this foursome that they have now at edge. Outside of that group, you said, Jerry, that Zena Umuya-Zulu is a guy that may be starting to make a move. Is it possible that that they expand outside of those four guys? Because last year was pretty much what, like you just brought it up, Jeff. It was just you had Sorrell was your guy, Ethan Burke's your guy, Trey Moore is your guy, and then Colin Simmons. You had four guys. Do they expand outside of that, or are we just looking at depth at some of those other positions, or just situational usage?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what Zena does this spring, and Lance Jackson we'll get to, because with Colton being out, Zena has a real opportunity to bust through the door now. So he is going to be running second team reps behind Ethan Burke a lot of the spring. And he is a guy that, again, Rod, I've heard that Texas is really high on his future. And he came in as a longer, wiry, strong guy.
Remember,
that is now added 20, 30, 25, 35 pounds in that range. And he's building that frame up to be SEC run ready. But with that length and that ability, I think the Texas is very high on where he can go as a player. And with Vossick out, that gives Zena an unbelievable opportunity to go in and steal reps from older guys next season. If he has a chance to bust through the door. It's really going to come down to what he does this spring. I'll also say this, because we talked about this with Chad Scott, and I know we'll talk about it on DB previews, but with Lyle and Clark coming in, it's a new set of eyes that are looking at all these guys for the first time in person. That gives a young kid an opportunity to really break through. And I think that young kid in the spring is going to be Zena. And I know we'll talk about the freshmen and maybe some long-term with them coming up.
Yeah, to give you guys an idea of how the reps were split last year, I said Ethan Burke was had the fourth most snaps last year at 324. After that, the next closest is Justice Finkley with 95.
There you go.
So that shows you how tight that edge.
How many snaps did Vossick have last year, Jeff?
65.
Okay.
Yep.
2 sacks, 65 snaps.
65. And Zena had one for whatever it's worth.
Yep.
He got him one snap.
No, it's interesting. And, and obviously the young guys, the freshmen coming in, which we'll discuss here, one of those guys, Lance Jackson, Smith-Orogbo, he kind of like you just mentioned with Zena, maybe he was kind of a project, got to add 40, 45 pounds on him before you get to see him really contribute for you. So they're more of a project there. But Lance Jackson, I've seen this human, and he is a huge human.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy looks like, physically he's ready to contribute. I guess now it's just about, can the mental makeup kind of catch up with his physical stature? But there's no doubt, man. 6'5", 262. Did he say he was 270 at one point?
Yeah, he did. And I was at Pleasant Grove spring of junior year when he ran what would have been, they were doing testing. So it was with a new system they had. So they were running 10s and 20s. But they said it would have been a 4.63, 4.65 as a spring of junior year in high school. Yeah, he's a gifted athlete. Look what his brother just did at the combine yesterday.
Yeah, Landon looked good.
40-inch vertical, what did he run, 4.6 flat, right around there. He's going to be a first rounder. And Lance is a bigger frame version of that athlete. That's what we're talking about. I'm not saying Lance is going to jump 40 inches, because here's the difference. I think Lance Jackson is perfectly built to be power edge in the SEC that is an inside pass rusher in Rod's favorite NASCAR package. He is going to be 6'5.5", 6'6", 280 pounds, broad-shouldered, long arms with natural explosive strength to him. I can't wait to see what he looks like. The before and after photos that Torrey Becton's going to have should be awesome if they ever post him. But he is going to be 280, 285, and he's going to be that guy that's going to be able to play the run, and then he's going to be able to rush the passer in the NASCAR package. Now, the key with him is he was at Pleasant Grove, smaller school in Northeast Texas. He was a two-sport guy, played baseball. On the football field, he played edge. He played tight end. He never really truly concentrated on one sport or one position until now. So what does his learning curve look like? If you start hearing noise about him in the spring, look, this guy is pushing younger guys, then Texas probably has a future star. When will that happen? I don't know. Well, that's kind of what we heard about Jordan Washington last year, Jeff, when Jeff Banks said, this guy's a future star. And he didn't even play this year. I mean, Lance Jackson has that type of ability. The question is, how long is it going to take him to get there?
It's interesting as things evolve and this staff continues to add one stat classes on top of each other. Jordan Washington was one of those guys, Jerry. You looked at the tight end body last, when he got to campus, like, okay, that looks a little different. And then being up close with Lance Jackson and Justice Terry, seeing those guys up close at the Cotton Bowl, I'm like, okay, these bodies are a little different. I haven't seen guys like this in a Texas uniform in a while. And since we're talking about edge, since that's where he's working, Justice Terry's got to factor into this somewhere. And Rod, I've given you my comp for him. Jerry, this has kind of been my comp for Justice Terry. Is he Lamar Houston? Is he a guy that starts his career at edge and then the body eventually grows to where he's a 295, 300-pound, just disruptive defensive tackle?
I like that. Yeah, and he would be great in that NASCAR package.
Yes.
Bumping him inside. Because, you're right. He's got some freaky athleticism. You could bump that guy inside depending on well, no, actually, you don't need, if you put him up there in a passing down, you don't necessarily need him to learn any, defensive technique or necessarily learn really the fundamentals of the position. You need him to get after the quarterback. I think he'd be great bumping inside early. All right.
Hey, Rod, I want to say one thing about that is to just I think Justice Terry will get reps at the edge position, also at the 5 tech. He's going to be in Kenny Baker's D-line meeting room most of the time. Because long-term, that's probably what he's going to be. I'll tell you another comp that people have had for him that's interesting. Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary came out of Michigan at 6'4 3/4 of 277, 34 1/8 inch arms. I could see that comparison that some people have had too with Rashawn Gary. So a guy that's maybe more of a 5, right, Jeff? That never maybe is as it grows into that 320-pound 3 type of guy, but he's so effective in what he does. That's going to be the question. Now, the thing with Justice Terry is he came to Texas in the 250s, and I think he's about 272 right now. So I think he was 257 when he showed up. So he's plus 15 right now. He will be he'll be the 5'3" long term for Texas, but he's starting it at edge / 5, but he'll be in Kenny Baker's room getting coached up as a future interior lineman.
I think they want all these, well, not all these guys, but the ones that bring it in with these freaky, like you said, freaky frames to be able to play multiple shades, right? That was ideally you would have wanted Alfred Collins to have been that guy. I don't know if his development kind of caught up to, like you said, the learning curve there, Jeff. But some of these guys, you want them playing multiple shades by the time they're 2 years, 3 years into the program. All right, let's thank our friends over at tackleaddict.com for sponsoring our spring position previews. Are you an avid fisherman who's always searching for the right supplies? Do yourself a favor and check out tackleaddict.com, owned and operated by former lifetime Longhorn Brian Roberson, also former Longhorn baseball great Brandon Belt. Tackle Addict has everything you need for the best in today's fishing equipment. Tackle Addict is for the everyday fisherman and for serious pros alike. Get their products shipped to you directly from the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's tackleaddict.com, ADDICT, tackleaddict.com. And Brandon and Brian say hook 'em horns. And thank you very much to tackleaddict.com for sponsoring our position previews here on Texas football. All right, we'll continue previewing the defense, of course. We'll go jump to the interior D-line, and then we'll and jump into, of course, the linebackers and the secondary. So join us for the next position previews. Thank you to Jerry for all your expertise. Thank you, Jeff, as well, for your time. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, and thanks to all of you guys out there for watching and for listening. And until next time, for Jeff, for Jerry, and for Matthew, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em horns.